Welcome back, everybody. Hope you had a good break. Just to let you know that we're live on Facebook right now. I think, on which channel are we on? Okay, we're on NTUC's UPME Facebook page live. So I'm just going to do an introduction all over again. Very good afternoon to all of you. We're here today for this event, Legal for Non-Legal Professionals. Very interesting topics as we approach the gig economy. Everyone's reading about freelancing and how you want to take up additional work in order to supplement your income. What can you do? What you cannot do? So today on this segment we have another two lawyers that will be sharing with us their experience and their legal expertise on some of these topics. So we have Yixian from Donaldson Burkinshaw, and we have Kah Hee from Derrick, Wong, and Lim BC LLP. So a warm welcome to the both of them. Okay, before we start again, this event is jointly organized by the Singapore Corporate Counsels Association, with Mel here, Asia Law Network, as well as NTUC U Associate. So before we start into this segment, have a think about the questions that you want to ask. On Facebook Live, so if you have any questions, please feel free to key into the comments box, and we'll see if we can pick it up and answer some of your questions. In the meantime, we'd like to thank the previous two lawyers who have come up and shared their experience and from their legal expertise on some of the employment law related issues we have discussed earlier. So can I invite Mel to give a token of appreciation to the two of you, Mr. Shokan as well as Chiao Hong. Mr. Tan. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for your participation and your contribution. So before we start, maybe we can get these two lawyers to talk a bit about themselves instead of me introducing you. So, Yixian?
Sorry. Hello, everyone. My name is Yixian. I'm from Donaldson Burkinshaw. We are a law firm. I'm a litigator. I go to court. I've been doing this longer than what I thought I would be doing for. So later on, if you have any questions about freelancing, independent contractor, feel free to ask us. Maybe you can start by with asking Kah Hee first, and then he can maybe deflect it to me later.
Hi everyone, I'm Kah Hee. Actually, Yixian and I came from the same law school. Almost 10 years ago, we graduated. We were just having a chat about it. So we have been in practice for almost 10 years. I started off in the courts before going into private practice. I'm now at Derrick, Wong, and Lim BC. My senior partners, one of whom is my MP for Mountbatten, and he's also the Deputy Speaker of Parliament. Before that, I was in Baker McKenzie, so I've always been doing dispute resolution. Right now, I'm also doing other things like corporate work, and employment law is also one of my subspecialties.
Thank you. So just to start, do we have any questions from the ground, or shall I go into some of the questions that were submitted earlier before the event? Okay, just to maybe talk about freelancing, okay, and the gig economy. What are some of this questions comes up like a lot because for example, yesterday I was having lunch with a friend, right, and she says, hey, Sherilyn, you should sign up for the Grab Hitch, and we should. Okay, you should sign up for Grab Hitch and be a Grab Hitch driver, right? And you can collect some money. In the meantime, make some friends. And I thought, okay, why not? So if I were to make money from, for example, Grab hitching, how do I have to think about my tax implications? And do I have to declare it? And how do I declare it? How does this happen?
Okay. So in relation to your income tax obligations, you obviously have to also report the income that you have earned as a Grab taxi driver. If you are, that will be considered your trade income that you have earned as a self-employed person. That will be separate from what you have earned, in your full-time employment elsewhere. So you will have both your employment income as well as your trade income under your self-employed business. So those will be your obligations under the Income Tax Act.
Thank you. Have you seen any of such cases where they didn't pay, or have you seen any of the cases where they don't declare their income and then what happens?
So, well, you know, all income is subject. Singapore is subject to income tax. Question is taxability. If you don't pay your income tax, IRS will come after you. Unfortunately, they are very efficient that way. I think it also depends, that maybe depending on IRS's administrative action, they may impose a fine or take other, impose other kinds of penalties. So do report your tax.
Okay. So one question that came in was, for example, if I were to do a freelance work outside of my formal employment, what are the kinds of agreements that For example, I already have one main employer, right? And then if I were to work on a freelance basis, other than from the earlier session just now, we spoke about how you have to report to your main employer, right? And to give them notice that I'm freelancing. But what kind of agreements can I then sign with on the freelancing work? Or is no agreement okay? So that means, for example, I work at an event and I get paid $50. Do I have to look for an agreement? Do I have to sign something? What do I have to look out for?
I think there are two facets to that question. I think first, as a threshold query, you should ask yourself whether you're even allowed to engage in freelance work when you are still being fully employed elsewhere. So that will very much depend on the contract, the employment contract that you have with your employer. You would have to examine yourself, or you have to get legal advice on whether your employment contract actually restricts you from engaging in freelance activities elsewhere. So there may be an express prohibition saying that you can't moonlight, you can't engage in freelance activities elsewhere, or you might have also some indirect obligations to for example, you are supposed to devote your full time and energy and attention to your full-time employment, and you're not supposed to work elsewhere. So the essence of it is that you have to make sure that you are actually legally covered if you go and decide to do freelance work elsewhere. And if you are allowed, or if you think that you want to take the risk to go and moonlight elsewhere, then you have to make sure that your you actually, of course, it's always good to have a written agreement with whoever you're providing the services to. So you can, of course, have it in writing. That's the best. You can get a lawyer to vet through your contracts that you may want to, enter into with whichever third party or service provider that that you are talking about. So at the end of the day, I think it's always good to have it in black and white.
Okay. Yixian, have you met any freelancers that might be, for example, the contract that he's talking about, right? What are things that should be inside those contracts that we need to look out for?
In the freelance contract?
Yes.
Well, of course, the obvious term is how are you paid? What are you paid? When are you paid? Those are the payment obligations in your freelance contract. Other obvious things would be you don't sign an agreement with something that goes against your main employment contract. If your main employment contract has a non-compete clause, then make sure that when entering into this freelance agreement, you do not breach that non-compete clause in your primary employment contract.
So one question that came up was, okay, so this guy asked, right, I'm a freelancer. Should I set up a local company or a sole proprietor to receive monies in exchange for the work done, or can I not set up the company and do that?
I think, okay, either way is legally fine. I mean, if you want to set up a company, you would have to, of course, incorporate the company. So there will be some fees involved. It's not much, but at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself what is your end objective. You want to enjoy some tax benefits, limited liability. Then of course it's always good to incorporate a company. That's just my usual advice to clients who come up to me to ask whether they should set up a company or not. Of course, you can also do it as a sole proprietorship. It means you just go out there and then you just perform your freelance services without incorporating a company. But of course, by doing that, you are exposed to unlimited liability in your own personal capacity. So, and you don't enjoy those income tax benefits that are available to a newly incorporated company.
There are a number. There are a number of freelancers here. Just now we saw your hands. Are there any questions around freelancing? Or yes. Sorry. Yes, she's coming.
The questions were regarding that you're already employed and you moonlight, right?
Yes.
What happens if, let's say, you are freelancing and at the same time you're looking for a job? And what would be the implication if you freelance and then you get a job? Would there be any legal?
So are you asking, like, for example, can you continue freelancing after you get the job, or?
Can I?
Yeah.
Or in the interview I have to be honest and upfront and tell them my reason. That will jeopardize my
Chances of being employed, whether your job. Okay.
other interview.
Okay.
So the thing is, what I mean, it's easy to talk about in theory and all that, but I think it boils down to ask yourself, what is the freelance job that you're doing? What is this fixed term employment job that you are seeking? Are these at odds with one another, or are they complementary? Those are some of the questions that your prospective employer may be thinking of. If you tell them, say, okay, I'm doing freelance, I'm a photographer, I'm a wedding photographer, I freelance taking photographs, and now I'm interviewing for a job with a wedding planning company. So you see, in that sense, you have some kind of services that are complementary, that company prospective employer may not necessarily prohibit you or say that, I don't approve of you doing freelance work on the side, especially if you're doing that during weekends, during non-office hours. So it's down to you to talk to your employers. Generally, personally, I don't know, is it upbringing or culture? Just, if there is something, it's always better to be upfront about it. You don't want to be hiding things, and then after that, if something crops up, and then your prospective employer will be, hey, why didn't you tell me this earlier? So when you join any new employer, you want to join on a clean footing, something that that is upfront and above board. That's my personal thinking.
Any thoughts? Anything else? Okay, great. Does that answer your question? Is it okay? Yes. Next. Oh, yes.
You mentioned that sometimes when they cannot freelance if they're full-time or what if, let's say, my company is going to hire a freelancer? How do I cover ourselves on that? Two scenarios, I guess, if we know they have a full-time job, and suddenly, what if we do not know they have a full-time job?
Okay, so for those who just joined us on our Facebook Live, we're on an event for legal for non-legal professionals. We're talking about freelancing. So we have a lady here that's asking about if you're going to hire a freelancer, whether you should know if the freelancer is employed or whether they're not employed. Or whether they can freelance. So how do you check that? And whether there's any legal implications on your end, right?
Okay, so I think it would be of your own interest to actually ask that prospective employee of yours, are you, participating in any other activities outside of work? because you don't want to be accused of inducing, a breach of contract between him and his employer. So in that situation, you have to ask him, okay, look, what kind of activities are you engaging in outside? Is it a contract of service or a contract for service? Of service meaning you're an employee, for service meaning you're like an independent contractor on a freelance basis. So it's always good at the interview to ask him directly, what his situation is, and to have it recorded. So at least you have already, you lay a paper trail to cover your interest, to make sure that you have already done your due diligence. Now, if he lies to you, or he hides the truth, or he tells you half truths, then then it's really not your problem already, because really you did your best to cover yourself. You have it recorded in black and white in your meeting notes, and you can't be accused of doing something illegal subsequently.
Maybe Yixian, would you like to elaborate on contract of service? Sorry, there's another question.
Sorry, my question is not related to her question. So
Okay.
I don't know if you guys have.
Yeah, did we answer?
Well, I guess what you're saying that I should have a clause to cover myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can of course incorporate a clause, a properly worded clause inside to cover yourself. But at the same time, of course, it's good to also do your own duty, through that question and answer session that you can engage in when you're interviewing him.
Maybe you can share with us like some practices, for example, in filling up the employment form or whatsoever. Can you put a clause that says, I declare that I have this employment and I'm allowed to freelance or work? Is that a practical?
Yeah, of course you can do that as part of the due diligence process. In fact, I think it's always good to have it in writing, so that at least he signs off on that checklist, saying that he is actually allowed to do this freelance work, even though he's formally employed elsewhere. And then I think that will be a very good and adequate cover, for yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. We have another question. Yes.
Hi, so my name is Divya. So a bit of a backstory. So I started as a freelancer, and I do like website design and content marketing, that sort of thing. So the good thing is I was very successful and I got a lot of clients, but that means that I need to grow. So I need to start hiring people to sort of become an agency, so to say. So I actually incorporated as a sole proprietorship, because obviously it was just me at the time. So now, does it mean that I have to change to limited, like a private limited, or like do I just hire freelancers? Like I'm a little bit confused about which strategy I should take.
Okay, just to repeat your question for our audience. Basically, you're a designer, right? Graphic designer, and you started to grow.
Designer, like a
Website
website
developer.
Content marketing. So basically, a marketing consultant.
Okay, and then you have started to grow and you got clients, and you registered yourself as a sole prop, right? And now you're asking if that makes sense moving forward because you're growing, or is it better for you to do something else? Okay.
Well, I think this is really a business strategy question. You have to ask yourself, what's the revenue you are looking at? How many people you are looking to hire? Do you want to expand your business just locally, or you want to go overseas? So you have a rough plan. Where do you want to go with your business? It's good that it's growing. Wonderful. The thing is, as a sole prop, you can still hire freelancers. That's up to you. I think one thing that Kah Hee mentioned earlier, the main benefit about going private limited incorporation is to have that a shield, that layer of protection, so that you are not personally liable. Say, for example, one of the freelancers that you hired did something wrong, screwed up big time, and then your end client is, we see it very often where they come to you and say that, hey, your agent your designer, so to speak, is did something wrong. I want you to fix it. Or in worst case scenario, they say that I want to claim damages. I say that you are in breach. And then if you are a sole prop, then you have that question mark, that uncertainty hanging over you. Will I be personally liable? Whereas if you are a private limited entity, then really it is that legal entity that is liable, not you personally, individually. So you have to think about that, think about how you want to grow your business. And as usual, law should not be, the legal side of things should not be hampering the growth. It should be aiding and helping you to expand your business.
Yes, and don't forget, you can get partial tax exemption for the first 3 years. So, if you're talking about growing your business, increasing your revenue, employing people, then I guess, if your business is successful, like what you're saying, you probably be looking at, enjoying some tax benefits. So when you set up a company, you get much more tax benefits than, as a sole proprietor.
Hi, I'm Sarah. Okay, so my question is, because I do freelance writing, so my question is, what if my client has yet to sign the contract, but we have started on the project, and he makes his payments regularly or not? But is that something that I should be concerned about?
So you're a content writer and you have a few clients, right? And some of the clients have paid and engaged you for your services, but there's no contract.
Yes, so it's just this particular client that
Okay.
hasn't signed the contract. We are all okay, everything's on time, project it's good, and we are on good terms. But from a legal perspective, is there anything that I should be worried about?
Okay, is there anything that she should be worried about legally? Well, there's no contract signed.
Yeah, when everything is rosy and you get paid on time, of course, you don't need a contract. But it's when things turn sour and something goes wrong, then, it's your word against his word. So you don't want that to happen. So of course, it's good to have a contract, a written contract. Of course, what you have now is an oral contract with him. Every time you set up a
Contract, he hasn't actually signed it.
Okay. So my advice is, of course, for you to think long term, since he's going to be someone who's going to engage your services, not only now but in the future. I think it's good for you to invest some time and also maybe get some legal advice on the contents of the contract and see if your rights and your interests are covered inside the contract, and to make sure that if something goes wrong, at least you're covered. Yeah.
So it's better to get
of course,
down,
of course, yes.
Yeah, so in the future, if there's going to be publications and all, so at least due accreditation is given.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Got
Yes.
it. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions about freelancing? We have one here.
Regarding if you're already being employed by a company and there's a term in your contract that says you're not supposed to be moonlighting outside, but it gives you an option that if you are doing something outside, you can declare it to a company, but there are certain indications on that. But now, if let's say I have a hobby on the outside, creating a mobile app, at which point does a hobby become moonlighting? Is there a particular point in time when it becomes moonlighting and then I could go and declare it?
Okay, so you're saying you have an employment, right, with a company, and the clause in the employment contract says you cannot moonlight, but at the same time, you can declare if you are moonlighting, and you have a hobby that's creating a mobile app, and at which point this hobby becomes moonlighting. Okay.
I think when your hobby starts earning you money, that is a very big sign that your hobby is something more serious. But really, if depends on your clause. Read the no moonlighting clause properly, read it carefully over and over again, see whether there are any ways to get around it, if it's a hobby. But at a certain point in time, if you're very passionate about that hobby, who's to say that you don't make a career decision to switch to be more serious and invest really into making that hobby into a business viable, then growing that business.
Okay, but what if this mobile app is being launched out to users for free, and see at some point in time you end up on an interview and you show up on a newspaper marketing your app, but it's free, you're not taking money. you haven't incorporated a company, you've not done anything, you just have a hobby that turns out that you're doing pretty well, then what happens? So at which point does that suddenly come in and say, hey, the company can come in and say, hey, no, this is considered moonlighting?
Is your company the kind that will not take too kind? So how are you using your time to develop this app? Is it within office hours, after office hours, your own leisure time?
It's my own leisure time. Like it's totally off office hours. Yeah.
So then really what you do during outside office hours and assuming completely unrelated to your work, that is really up to you how you use your time, right?
Sounds good. Yeah.
That's why I say you have to go through that no moonlighting clause carefully, many times over, see whether there are other things to be to consider or to explain away how that hobby remains a hobby. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
That's interesting, right? So what if, for example, he's in an app creating company? Then obviously, I think there will be a...
Then there will definitely be a conflict of interest. So you have to see what your company is doing, what you're doing, whether there's any conflict. That's the very first threshold question that you have to ask yourself. And secondly, even if you are not earning money, you have to ask yourself, are you spending so much time that, you are affecting your duty, to devote full attention to the company. Your contract your employment contract may very well provide that you're supposed to devote full time attention to the company and not do other things. But of course, everyone has your own hobbies and your own leisure time that you can, of course, you have every right to spend it however you want to spend it. So the way I see it, you have to look at the contract very carefully to see whether what you're doing now is actually something that is prohibited by the company, whether expressly or indirectly. And then if you're not so sure, I think it's best for you to seek legal advice, because at the end of the day, everything depends on the particular factual matrix of your case. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Hope that answers. Thank you. Any other questions? So with regards to seeking legal advice, if you need a lawyer to be online within 48 hours, you can go to AsiaLawNetwork.com. We have a quick consult system for you. Okay, any other questions on the ground? I see a hand. No? Oh, you're just stretching. Okay. Yes. Oh, which Facebook page are we on? UPME. Yes, it's NTUC's page, UPME. So before we go on, just to recap for those who have just joined us online, this is a legal for non-legal professionals event, and we're talking about legal implications when it comes to freelancing, contracting work, or working outside of your main employment. And this event is jointly co-organized by Singapore Corporate Counsels Association, UPME, NTUC, U Associate, as well as AsiaLawNetwork.com. So yes.
Yeah, my question is actually about, let's say you're a freelancer and you have a lot of trouble getting payments from someone you're contracted with to do work, right? You chase, and then there's always finance department, 1 month late, 2 months late. Is it advisable to go on Facebook and take a dump on that company? Like, will you be sued for defamation in that case?
So you're a freelancer, you're saying, and then you get
basically you're chasing late payments.
Chasing late payments, and these are signed agreements.
Yeah.
Okay, signed agreements. You've done the work, and you keep chasing their departments, right?
Yeah.
Finance and everything.
Yeah.
So you're asking if you can just go to their Facebook page and write something.
Yeah, because like for example, in the US they have like Glassdoor websites like that where you can actually post about anonymously about bad employers and stuff like that.
Yes.
But I don't see that here in Singapore, and defamation laws here also work differently.
Okay. Yes. 1 minute. Let's ask the lawyers.
Okay, I think as long as you state something that is factually correct, okay, 100% factually correct, you should be quite safe. But for your scenario, in relation to delayed payment or non-payment of the invoices that you have issued out for work done, it's best for you just to engage a lawyer, someone like me or Yixian, and then we'll write a letter of demand to the other side, see how they respond, and if their response is less than positive, then we'll take them to court. Yeah, and if your amount is say less than 10,000 or something, you can just go to the small claims tribunal, and then you can fight it out with the other side. And I've seen many of those cases because I'm actually also a mediator there. So it's usually quite clear cut, so you don't have to worry if you have everything in black and white. If the amount is more than 10,000 and the other side doesn't agree to have it in the small claims tribunal, you can just bring it to the state courts. Yeah. And that, I think, will be the legal way of getting back your money. I don't know how much Yixian charges lah. So, but for most of the boutique law firms, you're talking in the range of 250, 500, for a simple letter of demand. Yeah, but of course it depends on the volume of documents involved. If you're giving us a stack of invoices, then of course it might cost more.
Yes. Okay, hope that answers. So below 10,000, you can go to the tribunal. And if not, you can bring up the state courts, or you can engage lawyers to help you with letter of demands. Yes.
Could I just add something that I would advise against Facebook posts of this nature, because depending on how you post it, right, you could attract penalties or civil suit under or claim under the Protection from Harassment Act. I think I'm not very familiar with the provisions, but I think depending on how you do it, you could fall foul of that. So both look for the lawyers.
Yeah. So Chong is saying that we should be careful about posting on Facebook, right? Because if you phrase it the wrong way or you say something that's not right, you might get yourself into a suit, right? A civil suit. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, I'm Sabrina. Just wanted to check because I run an events company, but so of course with staff it's on full-time payroll, but we also hire our staff as a part-timer when the event happens on the weekend. So I just wanted to find out, like, is it possible that instead of adding that considered freelance, part-time amount into their payroll, or if I just pay them out, on the day of the event, which is the more legal way to do so?
Okay, so you're saying you run an events company, and some of the staff you have are paid full-time, but they also have part-time.
I engage them on, like, for the event, they are engaged, we pay them a part-time fee as well.
Okay, so for the event.
The part-time fee be included back into their payroll, which then CPF is accounted for, or is it okay to just pay them, like all the other part-timers, like on event day, they're just given payment on the spot after the event?
Okay, so are they supposed to be paid together with the part-timers, or do they have to include it in their main employment payroll?
Okay, if you're talking about freelancers, of course they get paid at the straight after the end of the project. But if you're talking about part-time workers, then under our Employment Act, if they these part-time employees, when you're talking about part-time employees, the definition is that they have worked less than 35 hours a week. So then there will be an employment of part-time regulations that will kick in, separate from the Employment Act. And part-time workers are also still entitled to get their CPF. Okay, so if you don't pay them CPF, then you'll be going to get a call from CPF board, and they are also very active, as active as IRAS. Okay.
It's only $500 and above, then the CPF obligated.
Yes, correct. So you have to see whether you fall within those.
So let's say we fall below the 500, because a one-day event is, let's say, $10 per hour, and it's a 10 hours event, so it's $100. But they're actually my full-time staff, just that we also pay them a part-time fee while they are on site at event, because that's, we treat them like all the other part-timers or freelancers that we engage. Just that I'm asking, so then does that $100 have to go into their monthly payroll, which then would also be CPF accounted for, or actually it's okay that I just pay off the $100?
I get what you mean. You have to put it in because you're talking about sums of like 500, and then if they are full-time employment, salary is how much is it roughly? 2,000. It still falls below the cap of 6,000. You see, yeah. So as long as it falls below the cap of 6,000, you have to declare it to CPF, and then you have to pay CPF on top of that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Hope that answers. So you have to add it into your payroll and declare it for CPF. Yeah. Thank you.
Hello. Yes, a question on the end. Yeah. This is my friend asked me this question before. So he's now employed, and then he wants to do something like a hobby, then turn into kind of business kind of things in terms of limited edition collectibles. So usually these items are quite overpriced, from much more, maybe up to 2-3 times the recommended retail price. And so instead of one person come out with such a huge sum, so he's thinking of creating like a raffle idea, meaning that let's say this item costs $1,000, for example, correct? So he creates maybe 20 slots of $50. So each of the person, they will buy. It's not bidding, it's buy the slots at $50 each. And one person would get, based on some algorithm or something, just one person would get it. And so it's more of a lucky draw and stuff. So what's, is this like a, is it, does it, what do you call it, law or something?
Is it considered a business? Are you asking?
No, I mean like he's thinking of to start this, but then he's not sure how does Singapore law looks at this. Is it like, because I know that if it goes into lottery, then it's different, like gambling. But this is not so much of gambling because there's no bidding element. It's just like it's a fixed amount, and it's more of a lucky draw kind of thing. So what's the Singapore's law on this?
Maybe you explain.
I think your friend is treading on very thin ice. I know he says it's not lottery, but the mechanism, as per what you are explaining, sounds very, very similar to lottery.
Correct. That's the reason why I'm asking.
Yeah. So.
That's the reason why he's asking.
Yeah. So maybe that mechanism needs to change if you want to make sure that you really are very clear of this lottery side, because the moment you hear lottery, you face a whole host of other regulations. You have regulatory bodies coming in to police that, to make sure, are you appropriately licensed, are you all regulated. So maybe that mechanism, he can think of some creative way to work around it. Yeah.
But I mean, like let's say in the gaming industry, many of the games are like this, of this nature, as in we have certain limited items, collectibles, then you kind of like buy. So isn't that also kind of like lottery? But that is kind of okay.
But that one is a game. Yours is it's an item, right? So at the end of the day, you're gaming for gaming. There are, I'm not familiar with computer gaming, but I would imagine at some point in time you get certain. How does that work? Does everybody get like to play for certain duration of time, or whereas item, once it's gone, right? So say you have 10 people bidding, and then only one manages to get it because the algorithm picks that lucky person.
Yeah, that's it.
So that is not very different from, say, if I buy Toto and the computer system picks my winning ticket.
Okay, so in this.
So you need to think of a different mechanism to structure your business so that you don't hit this gray area of are you like Toto but are you like lottery but not like lottery.
Okay. So if let's say he makes it clear, then he has to.
I'm so sorry. Let's leave this for the one-to-one later. Shall we move on first?
Sorry, that's a very special case, so I think we'll discuss that later. Thank you. Any other questions with regards to? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think we keep getting freelancing, moonlighting, right? So what is the actual definition and whether if there is, or in the legal terms, statutory wise or anything. What is freelancing? What is moonlighting?
So you're asking the legal definition between moonlighting and freelancing. Okay, I'll leave it to the.
Is there any actual definition?
Okay, so freelancers, is a very loose term to describe independent contractors, and there's always a distinction drawn between independent contractors and employees. Now, how you distinguish one from the other is actually based on case law, common law. So I don't think there's any statute that will define, what's the difference between an employee and an independent contractor, a freelancer. So there will be some elements and some factors which you have to go through. Some questions you have to ask yourself. Okay, number one, how are you paid? Are you paid at the end of each project, or does your salary come in at the end of each month? Okay, so if it's the former, it's probably going to be like a freelancer. You're paid at the end of each project. Number two is, control. Do you have full control over how you are going to carry out your activities? Who you employ, whether you bring your own equipment, your own tools, your own materials, or is it something that is provided for by the other side? Then there are things like, there is actually nothing. It's not like a conclusive list that you have to just check each box, because you have to look at the whole factual matrix, and then you will decide, on a whole, whether you fall under the category of an employee or an independent contractor. But there are some factors that we usually look at, things like the how you're paid and the element of control.
So does that answer your question?
Yeah, more towards like freelancer and moonlighting. Right? We're coming to a place where we are scared about liability of you if you are employed and you work. Employment means we are subjected to employment contract, which tells you your working hours is from what time to what time. So our moonlighting is all talking about after working hours, anything within outside of our so-called defined working hours. So if, for example, we work for an employer, and then we have like whether it's interest that is giving you money or purposely go to do some contract based on your experience, on your knowledge or whatever, then we do it after working hours. So technically, in that sense, are we liable to the company if we do anything outside of working hours and it does not conflict with the employment? I think that's more where most of us are worried about, in that sense. Singapore, in a sense, I don't think everyone do one job.
I think
unless you are very well paid.
Yeah. I think in the word of moonlighting, it's always in context of a main employment, right? So,
so there is no, the law doesn't draw a distinction between the word freelance and the word moonlight, okay? So I'll take it as the same, okay? And whether you do it within office hours, after office hours, during your break times, if your employment contract says that you cannot take on outside work as a freelancer, you cannot moonlight, then you cannot do it, okay? It's prohibited, whether you do it during a lunch break, during a tea break, or after office hours when you knock off. So that is, so if there is the contract, your employment contract specifically prohibits such activities, then you you'll be falling foul of the employment contract, and you'll be breaching it if you actually engage in those freelance and moonlighting activities. Of course, there are some contracts which say that, okay, you cannot do it if they are in conflict with the company's interests and the kind of activities. Say for example, if you are working in a bakery and you go out and your freelance work is actually being a baker somewhere else, then of course there's a conflict there. So it really depends at the end of the day on your employment contract.
So once again, always read your employment contract is like what binds you. Sorry, we have a question over there.
So small variation in that. What about employment contract limitations if you're a director of another company, but maybe you're not actively claiming a salary as an employee in that company?
Okay, so if you're a director of another company but you're not paid, so do you have to does that fall foul of your employment contract with your existing employer? Yeah.
You are talking about being like a sleeping director, an inactive director, or okay. So that again really depends on the exact terms of your employment contract. So if the contract states that you're not supposed to engage in any activities outside your full-time employment, they may specify exactly what kind of activities you're talking about, and I've seen clauses where they will exclude the clause will include you not being a director of another company, or employee or agent or whatever. So these kind of clauses usually they are quite widely worded, so it's a matter of interpretation whether it covers your situation where you are actually appointed as a director of the company. So at the end of the day, it's a matter of contractual interpretation and the terms of your contract.
So maybe we can ask, in this kind of scenarios, right, in a normal, or rather most cases, companies will typically have the part where you can declare. Is that a normal behavior of most companies, or what is a standard way of proceeding? From your experience, like different companies have different ways of.
Yeah, like different companies, they have different ways. Some I've seen, they would give you a straight express prohibition. You're not supposed to engage in activities outside of your full-time employment. There may be a additional subclause that says that in the event you feel that you are engaging in some activities which may be in conflict with the above clause, you are to immediately declare to the company, and then of course in a real life scenario, most employees will be quite afraid to tell the employer, I've been actually doing this for the last few months. So the problem usually arises when the company finds out, that you are actually doing all this stuff behind their backs, and of course they will take the position that is in breach of this of this clause, which doesn't allow you to do freelance work outside. So most of the time, the employees, in my experience, they don't really go out there and tell the employers, okay, I've been doing this for the last few months. Yeah. Usually it doesn't work like that in real life.
Anything to add from experience? No? Okay. Cool. So, yep. So the key is to declare or to discuss with your employer before they find out on their own. I guess that's a more difficult circumstance to be in. Any other questions? Okay, so I'll just take a question from someone who's written in. So what are some of the important components to cover in a client agreement if you're a freelancer? Like, what are the things that I need to think about? For example, when I'm billing the person who's contracting me for freelance work.
Okay, I mean, I'll start off by saying the usual components in such a contract, of course, be, okay, usually it's on a project basis, so how you are going to be paid, how much you're going to be paid, when is the work supposed to be completed, and what if something, what if there's a delay, what will happen, will there be any damages to be paid? Of course, sometimes you have a liquidated damages clause inside, to say that if there's a delay of 1 day, you equate to how much money that you have to pay, an X amount, and those are the usual terms that may be quite commonly reflected in such an agreement. You want to add anything else?
Also, maybe you can look at limitation of liability clauses. If you're a freelancer and you want to impose a cap on your risk exposure, then there is also one contractual mechanism that you can use.
Oh yes, and the dispute resolution clause also. It's quite useful to have that. so that in the event a dispute arises, you know whether you have to go to court, or before that you may have to go through mediation, or maybe you end up in arbitration. So it really depends on what kind of mechanism you want to employ in the event a dispute arises.
Okay. Sounds good. So always look for a lawyer when you need to get these agreements in place, because they'll tell you the best practice in your industry and how you can go about solving some of these disputes. Sorry. So any other questions? Last question to go for freelancers, or if you're doing a side gig. Anybody who are like I don't know, Uber drivers or Grab drivers here? No? Okay. Now I wanted to ask what kind of contracts.
They're probably on the road.
Okay, yes, that's true. Any other questions for Yixian? And yeah, I don't know, but I have been texting Kah Hee a bit long. So any questions for Yixian, like maybe so for example, okay, Yixian is a mom. So for example, if I'm a mom, right, and during my maternity leave, I decided to do something on the side as an enterprise, or like a freelancing thing, by taking care of more children for my friends. Yes, babysit like some of my friends' babies, right? So do you think that I hear that a lot, so I'm not sure, like, does that fall foul with, for example, freelancing? I know there's some other implications when it comes to liabilities, right, of other people's children. Yeah, so maybe
No. When you're on maternity leave, you're still employed by your company. So everything that we have discussed about whether you're allowed to moonlight remains the same as we have discussed. But really, before you volunteer to babysit other children, just be very mindful that, it's not your own kid. Maybe you have to pay a bit more attention before you take on the onerous task.
We have a few questions from Facebook.
Okay.
So I'm just going to read them. You can choose which ones you want to answer.
Cool.
Hanan asks, what legal actions can a freelancer take when a company doesn't pay? Related to that, Damon Chua has asked, how do we ensure we get paid for our freelance shoots or films? And lastly, Angelia Ong asks, what happens if the HR is also moonlighting? Does that allow them to moonlight?
Okay, great.
I think the first two questions are quite similar, how they're getting paid, and what their rights are, if they are not paid. I think it applies to any industry, even like when we lawyers, when our clients happen to default on our payments, we also have to, we may have to take action against them. I don't take action against my clients who, thankfully, my collections are quite good. So, you can, just think of ways, like for example, getting a deposit first, and then if they don't pay, then of course you have to go through some legal means and getting a lawyer to write a letter of demand to the other side, and making sure that if they don't, if they still refuse to pay, then you have to take court action against them. So I think that's pretty standard. And what was the last question?
If HR is also moonlighting.
If HR is also moonlighting, okay. I mean, I'm just quite amazed that everyone has so much free time, to develop hobbies and do freelance. I mean, we lawyers, we don't have time for anything else apart from our full-time work. No, I mean, if HR is doing it, then of course, if their employment contract also prohibits that, then they will similarly be liable for breach of contract and liable for damages if the company decides to take action against them. So they are going to be treated equally like all other employees in the company.
So any other questions from the floor? If not, we'll end this segment, and Kah Hee and Yixian is going to be out there at the break area to answer your questions if you have any further more targeted questions. Actually, just now we had someone come up to ask about some legal issues where from our previous segment. I think I'll invite her later outside at the break time to talk to Xiao Hong and Shokan. Okay, thank you. Well, for those who are here with us online, once again, this is legal for non-legal professionals. You can rewind this and watch it again. Very informative if you're a freelancer or you're doing a side gig or you have a very serious hobby that's about to turn into a very big business. It's important to know what your legal implications are, when you should declare, how you should be negotiating this with your employer, your current employer, and your current employment project. So thank you very much. Thank you, Yixian. Thank you, Kah Hee, for having it. So I'll have Mel to give a token of appreciation to the two of you. Thank you for your time. Okay, same thing. We'll have a 15 minutes break outside, so feel free to approach them. And then we'll come back here for the last segment, which is on startups. And if you're looking to start something on your own, feel free to collate your questions or come to us before the segment starts so that we can help you answer the questions. Thank you.